China just dropped something that basically nobody expected. And honestly, the whole coding world is still trying to figure out what just happened. Because Zhipu AI, a company based in Beijing, just quietly released GLM-4.7, an open source model that cost up to 7 times less than Claude on output tokens, beats Claude Sonnet 4.5 on specific tool use test, and comes with a feature called preserved thinking that actually remembers what it was thinking about across long coding sessions. And the crazy part is that these models scored 84.9 on live Codebase V6, jumped from 17.2% to 42.8% on the HLE benchmark when using tools. And the entire thing is available right now on Hugging Face for anyone to download. So let's talk about it. Alright, so GLM 4.7 launched on December 22, 2025, and it came out of now here. People were busy watching OpenAI and Anthropic fight for the top spot. And then Zhipu AI just pushed this thing live across their z.ai platform, added it to Claude Code, Client, Code, and basically every major coding tool developers actually use. And the first thing that caught everyone's attention was the pricing. For API access, it cost $0.60 per million input tokens and $2.20 per million output tokens. If you want to use it through their GLM coding plan, it starts at just $3 per month. Compare that to Claude Sonnet 4.5 at $3 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. That means GLM 4.7 cost about 5 times less on input and nearly 7 times less on output. And you start to see why developers are paying attention. This is not some budget model that barely works. This is a model claiming performance close to the top dogs at a fraction of the cost. And here's the thing, the numbers actually back up those claims because GLM 4.7 hit 73.8% on SWE-bench verified, which is a test where models have to fix real GitHub issues. That is a 5.8% jump over GLM 4.6, which scored 68%. But the jump on SWE-bench multilingual was even bigger. It went from 53.8% to 66.7%, a massive 12.9% increase. What that tells you is that this model is not just copying English GitHub patterns. It is actually understanding code plus instructions plus reasoning in different languages at the same time. Terminal Bench 2.0 is where things get really interesting. GLM 4.6 scored 24.5%, which was honestly painful to use. Anyone who tried running it inside a coding agent could feel it struggling. Comments were right, but the order was wrong. State got lost. Recovery logic was weak. GLM 4.7 jumped to 41%, a 16.5% improvement, and users are saying they can actually feel the difference. The model retries more carefully, does not pretend a failed command worked, and stops breaking down after one mistake. Now, let's talk about the other benchmarks because this is where GLM 4.7 really starts to compete with the big closed models. On live Codebase V6, which tests real-time coding ability, GLM 4.7 scored 84.9. That is higher than Claude Sonnet 4.5's reported score on the same test. On the HLE benchmark, which stands for Humanity's Last Exam, here is where the progression gets interesting. GLM 4.6 scored just 17.2%. GLM 4.7 without using any tools jumped to 24.8%. But when you give GLM 4.7 access to tools, it reaches 42.8%. That is a 148% improvement from the base GLM 4.6 score. HLE is not a typical test. It is designed to break models by forcing them to reason through long, hard problems where most AI systems quietly fall apart. GLM 4.7 jumped from barely working to actually competitive with the top models. And when you look at Tau squared bench, which tests tool use across multiple steps, the official z.ai documentation states GLM 4.7 scored 84.7%, reaching what they call open source state of the art. Some independent analysis report 87.4%, but the company's official number is 84.7%. Either way, that benchmark is brutal because it shows planning errors, not knowledge gaps. You can know everything and still fail if your step-by-step planning breaks down. For math reasoning, multiple sources report GLM 4.7 scored 95.7% on AI AME 2025, which is a difficult math competition. That puts it in the same range as top closed models. And on GPQA Diamond, which tests graduate level science questions, it scored 85.7%. These numbers show that GLM 4.7 is not just a coding model, it has strong reasoning ability across different types of hard problems. So how is this model actually doing all this? Here is where it gets technical. But stay with me because this part explains why GLM 4.7 feels different when you use it. The model has about 355 billion total parameters. Through you will see some sources mention 358 billion. But here is the key part. It uses a mixture of experts design, which means it does not turn on all those parameters at once. Instead, only about 32 billion parameters activate for any single task. This is how it stays fast while having the power of a much bigger model. Think of it like having 355 billion tools in a toolbox, but you only grab the 32 billion you actually need for each job. This keeps it efficient and saves energy. It supports a 200,000 token context window, which is enough to hold about 800,000 characters of text. This is roughly a 300-page book in a single conversation, and it can output up to 128,000 tokens in one go, which means it can write entire software projects in a single response without cutting off. The model runs at about 55 tokens per second on specific hardware setups, which balances speed with the heavy thinking it needs to do. Though that speed can change depending on what computer you run it on and what settings you use. The first piece of the system is interleaved thinking. This means the model pauses and reasons before every response and every tool call. It does not just react, it thinks first, which reduces random mistakes and makes it better at following instructions. The second piece is preserved thinking, and this is a big one. In normal models, the reasoning steps get thrown away after the response is finished. So every time you ask a follow-up question, the model has to figure out its logic from scratch again. GLM 4.7 keeps all those thinking blocks across the entire conversation. It reuses the reasoning it already built instead of starting over. That reduces mistakes, keeps the model consistent, and makes long coding sessions way more stable. Anyone who has built coding agents knows how often models completely change their mind after the 5th or 6th turns. Preserved thinking fixes that problem. The third piece is turn-level thinking. This gives you control over when the model thinks deeply and when it just answers quickly. If you are asking a simple question like, what is the basic way to write this function, you can turn off thinking to save time and money. If you are asking it to solve a complex problem with massive steps, you turn thinking on and let it work through the logic carefully. That control matters because models that think too much on simple tasks waste tokens and cost more money. Models that do not think enough on hard tasks give you broken answers. Now, let's talk about real-world examples because test scores are just one part of the story. Zhipu AI showed up something they call vibe coding, which is their way of saying the model makes better-looking user interfaces by default. When you ask it to build a website, it understands visual layout, color matching, and where to put different parts way better than the previous version. One test asked it to create a voxel art scene with a pagoda and garden with cherry blossoms. The output from GLM 4.7 looked polished, modern, and ready to use. The output from GLM 4.6 looked messy and broken. For office work, the model got way better at making slides. The accuracy for 16:9 layout in presentations jumped from 52% in GLM 4.6 to 91% in GLM 4.7. That means most of the time you can open what it creates and use it without fixing layout problems. And it is not just about visuals. The model is better at understanding instructions with many steps, breaking down complex tasks, and working inside agent tools like Claude code without falling apart. It puts together visual understanding, logic control, and app code into one system, which means you can build interactive apps like gesture control tools or real-time response systems way faster than older models. But here is the part people in the AI community are really excited about. GLM 4.7 is open source. The model weights are available right now on Hugging Face and Model Scope. That means anyone can download it, study how it works, and run it on their own computers. And yeah, running it locally is not cheap. You need serious GPU power, usually multiple high-end cards or powerful hardware. But for developers and companies that want full control over their AI tools, this is a huge deal. You are not locked into API limits, rate limits, or waiting for a company to approve how you use it. You own the model, you control how it runs. The moment GLM 4.7 went live, social media went wild. People on X, Reddit, and Hacker News started posting screenshots of test scores with GLM 4.7 sitting at the top of multiple lists. One user on Reddit said that more models releasing this close to top private models just shows there really is not a secret trick that OpenAI, Google, or Anthropic have. It really is just all about computing power and training data. That comment got a lot of attention because it touches on something people have been wondering for a while. If a startup in China can build a model that competes with the best models from big companies, then maybe the gap between open source and closed source is smaller than everyone thought. Users started running real tests right away. Some people tried coding tasks and saying GLM 4.7 feels more natural than its competitors, while Claude Sonnet 4.5 sometimes just copies and pastes solutions. GLM 4.7 actually tries to solve the problem from the beginning. One person on Hacker News said they could finally run a coding helper locally on a Mac Studio without depending on the big API companies. Another person pointed out that while the speed looks good on paper, the loading times can still be slow, especially on smaller versions. Creative users also jumped in. Writers and roleplay fans say GLM 4.7 produces less boring text, fewer stock phrases, and better character consistency. One common test is RWPY load because small mistakes in that universe show weak models fast. People said GLM 4.7 handled it way better than older versions. The overall feeling was that this is not a model trying to look good on test. This is a model that was built to actually work in messy, long seasons where things go wrong and the AI needs to fix itself without breaking down. And then there is the competitive angle. GLM 4.7 launched just days after everyone was waiting for Gemini 3 to take over the week. Instead, Zhipu AI grabbed the spotlight. The model is being put directly against Claude Sonnet 4.5 in the aged coder space. And while Claude still leads in some areas like clean, frost-dry coding and polish, GLM 4.6 beats on tool use test, cost way less, and gives you open access to the weights. Developers who run agents all the time instead of just occasionally are looking at the cost difference and realizing they could save a lot of money by switching. And let's be clear, GLM 4.7 is not perfect. It still struggles with some tasks. Users report that it is probably 6 to 7 months behind the absolute peak performance in certain difficult cases. It is not the best at everything, but it is very good at most things and excellent at several. And the fact that it is open source changes the game, because now developers can try things, make changes, and build on top of it without asking permissions. Zhipu AI also made it clear they are moving fast. This is their fourth major release in 2025. GLM 4.5 came out in July 2025. GLM 4.6V launched earlier this month, and now GLM 4.7 is here. That release speed shows they are trying to get developer attention by shipping fast and staying competitive. And honestly, the whole industry is watching this, because if open source models can match or beat the best private models at a much lower cost, then the power balance changes. Developers get more choices, companies spend less money, and the big labs have to move faster to stay ahead. The question is not whether open source models can compete anymore. GLM 4.7 just answered that. The real question now is how fast the rest of the industry will respond. That is where we will wrap it up. One thing I'm really curious about is whether OpenAI and Anthropic will change their pricing or push out new features to keep their lead. Drop your thoughts below. Make sure you are subscribed, hit that like button, and I will see you in the next one.